Don't look up. David Fowley of Keeping It Real. I said, don't look up.
Ah,
Don't. It's a
sorry.
conspiracy.
It's like don't touch the oven, but you're gonna touch the oven. I get it. Yeah.
Okay, so this is one of the more, I guess, controversial movies to come out in a while. It's got an almost even divide on Rotten Tomatoes, I think critically, isn't it like 55%, or is that on Metacritic or something? I had not watched this movie, partially because I don't know that I'd spoken to anyone who remotely liked it or read any positive opinions of it until I think you messaged me, as you often do, and said, "Hey, have you checked this out yet? I kind of dug it." I'm like, "Really? I should watch it." And I did, and I really dug this movie. But I have to say, and I kind of teased you with this a little bit ago, I had the same issue with this as I had with another movie starring Jennifer Lawrence that we talked about a few years ago called Mother from Darren Aronofsky. That was a film.
Another comedy.
Right. That was a movie that was basically about, is the Bible from the beginning to the end, but told in sort of a modern day crazy nightmare metaphor. I had picked up on it being sort of an allegory for the writer-director Darren Aronofsky's life and relationships, and a lot of stuff that had been publicized in the recent to that film. We had a great conversation about that. Don't Look Up, I watched as a COVID hysteria metaphor, but everything I've read online, again, thanks to you for sending me some stuff, like there's a good Gizmodo piece and a piece from Michael Phillips in the Tribune talking about how it's this crazy global warming metaphor. I'm like, I get that, but even now knowing what it is, I feel like it works almost better as a COVID metaphor. And I wonder how much of it was sort of tweaked during the filming of it to make it more reflective of our modern times, because this didn't still start filming until deep into the pandemic.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious. I would love to know a whole lot more about the behind the scenes, and I'm sure I could have, boned up on that before our, discussion here. But I think I want to go back to what you're saying about, controversial. Do you think this would have been as controversial if we weren't in a pandemic, if we weren't already sitting at home, pretty much streaming anything we could, and those are our options? If this didn't drop in Netflix, if it was only in theaters and there was no pandemic, do you think people would be going out and seeing this and saying, controversy?
It's very interesting. I don't know if this movie, again, it's so wild to me that this was pitched and greenlit before the pandemic really hit, because there's so much in here that relates to what we are living through now culturally, in terms of media, in terms of like science and even scientific figures. That I think it would have been really weird if this had just come out in 2020 or whatever, and people like, yeah, sure, I guess. But, I look at Leonardo DiCaprio's character and his arc, and I see, and I know this is going to be a controversial statement, but I see him as a Dr. Fauci type of character, a person who is a scientist who gets kind of, I'm not in Fauci's brain to know if he has gotten.
Fauci's a little bit more stable.
But just the idea, I'm not saying that any of this has gone to his head, but just the idea that there is this kind of a boring government, scientist who suddenly is like doing TV commercials. Like you saw last year, Fauci is like on the cover of like lifestyle magazines. He's got children's books written about him. He's appearing on Sesame Street. There's
just like Leo DiCaprio's character.
Right. and so it's this whole, and this movie is ripe with all sorts of metaphors. Some of them, I think, too broadly drawn. Some of them, I think, pretty perfectly drawn. And I think as far as the controversy, I would say that Adam McKay, who did The Big Short, which I loved, he did Vice, which I did not like really at all, and then he's made this one. It's a big, broad satire, broad in the sense that he has his targets, but like the South Park guys, he's going to shoot his, venom in all directions. And if I had to guess, I would say that there are some people. I don't think the people on the political right really give a crap about this movie. They're probably not going to watch it. I think a lot of the negativity we're seeing are coming from people on the left and progressives saying, "Hey, you know, you can't make fun of us. Like, why is this Trumpian presidential character look and act kind of like Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump?"
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's not really making fun of one, say, let's say political parties. It's not making fun of one more than the other, I don't think.
Right.
I feel like it's just making fun of how we are right now, period. I mean, the fact that Jennifer Lawrence's character, gets on this show, The Daily Rip. I love the name of that show. And she just basically loses her mind and says, "Don't you get it? We're all going to die." And that whole thing, she becomes like 10,000 memes. It's like, that's what we do with that kind of information, is just we turn them into this, viral, bizarro entity. And, regardless of the fact that this is an actual human being, we just go get out our, varying degrees of Photoshop skills and just go at it. It's
and
like,
that's
yes.
right. And that's a very kind of poignant thing. And it's tough because, you and I are no strangers to memes. Not that we make them, but we certainly love sharing them around, either on private Facebook groups or public ones.
Yeah.
It's fun, but it is hard to remember sometimes that there are human beings at the center of this, whether it's something like a real world figure who's fallen from grace, or even just a character in a movie that we don't like, that people like to make fun of, was played by an actor who is also associated with that kind of ridicule. But specifically what I'm talking about in terms of this kind of even distribution of the targeting, you've got the this universe's version of the MAGA hat wearing redneck who doesn't believe that there's a giant comet coming until he looks up in the sky and says, "It was real all along," like this broad cartoon. But then you also have Kate Blanchett's character. You mentioned the Daily Rip. That is from the font on the logo to the opening credits package of this news show, a parody of Morning Joe, which is on MSNBC. And Kate Blanchett's character is essentially Mika Brzezinski, down to the accent, down to the fact that she comes from this political dynasty of like fabulous wealth, and she's I don't know if she's a raging alcoholic and a sex fiend.
Isn't her name Brie Avanti?
Something like that. But again, I can see people who are very much into quote unquote into political satire feeling a little bit rubbed the wrong way, and like, wait, you're not supposed to be aiming that cannon at us. Mm-hmm. And I think it was Tim Pool pointed this out on one of his podcasts, because he was talking a bit about the movie. The reflection in the glass of the Daily Rip, the word "rip," when it's reflected in the camera lights, is upside down, and it spells lib.
Wow.
Yes. And so like the entire, like, it's not in all the shots, but any of the wide shots, and there are quite a few of them where they're sitting at the table, it just big letters as lib. But so the premise of this movie is two scientists, one scientist, she's a PhD candidate, Jennifer Lawrence, she's from Michigan State. She discovers that there's this comet that is on its way. It's like 9 or 10 kilometers wide. It's on its way to Earth, and it's on a direct course, and it's an extinction level event. They described, I think, was it 10 billion or 10 million nuclear bombs are going to wipe everything out. And they've got like 6.5 months until impact.
15 days. Yeah. Right.
So Leo DiCaprio is sort of the mentor scientist that's working with her, and they get this information. It's reported to, I guess, the head of NASA or one of those governmental organizations. They get in touch with the head of planetary defense, which we are informed is a real body. And then it gets all the way up to the White House, and the president in this universe is, Meryl Streep, playing like not even a reality show star. She's got a Webby award for for some kind of illicit performance she did in 2015 or something like that. Her son is played by Jonah Hill, who's also the chief of staff. They're totally vacuous and self engrossed, and they don't take this threat seriously. And in order to get their story out, these scientists go rogue. They go to the media. They end up on the Daily Rip. Jennifer Lawrence has a meltdown, which results in her being a meme. Leo DiCaprio, who's much more not photogenic, but more cooperative with the media, becomes this media darling.
Charming, yeah.
In one of the more obvious and I think less well handled in terms of editing moves, he ends up having a love affair with Cate Blanchett. I guess who can blame him, but also he's cheating on his wife, played by Melanie Linsky, which I think is a crime against humanity. I like the idea of the metaphor of this scientist being seduced by the media, literally. But it's so abrupt that I watched this with my wife and she's like, what is he doing?
Yeah, right. And I think up until then, I thought I really was on board with his character, because I really yes, he is, prone to anxiety episodes. He takes Xanax and, but I like that right away. We've seen tons of these disaster movies, you and I, and I feel like the reaction that we get from Jennifer Lawrence's character and DiCaprio is it just feels real, because he keeps on freaking out, I can't believe this is real, this is happening, this is what, and I felt that anxiety, and I like the fact that it was not really ending, it was just changing a different atmosphere. There was that scene where they're like, all right, we got to get you to the White House, and this is the only plane we have to ship you in the White House, and it's like a cargo plane. It's like, where do we sit, and they're like, they wanted to say to the guy who was greeting them on the tarmac, he's like, hi, I'm Dr. Mindy, and he's like, I don't care, just get on, go, and they're like, oh, okay. So it's like they're being forced into this situation when all they want to do is let people know there's this planet killer coming, hurling towards us from space. And I even so we see his anxiety just in different situations as he's making his way to the White House. And then, like you said, once he's on that, Daily Rip show, it just feels like, yes, she throws herself at him, and even if he went with it, there's that scene where, she plays, tonsil hockey with him in the hotel hallway. Okay, fine. The next shot is they're in bed together. There isn't that one point where he's having an anxiety attack because he just realized that he cheated on his wife, because it looks like they have a really good relationship, him and his wife and their kids and everything, and I like the fact that, they cast somebody who seems similar in age to, DiCaprio. Maybe she might be a little older, I don't know, but it just seemed like an average couple, and not just, oh, he married up, or he married down, or whatever.
He's got it's not like DiCaprio in real life where his wife's 25.
Right. She's not like a, supermodel. Of course, he is an astronomer in Michigan State. So it's just kind of fitting,
And I also like the fact that he's got pretty much adult children. I mean, late teens, early 20s. Which is also kind of jarring to me, because Leo DiCaprio, even though he's put on a lot of weight for this role, 20s. And he's put on some weight for this role, and he's got the scientist beard and everything, so he looks all disheveled, but he still looks a little too young to have kids that age. Or maybe I'm not willing to let DiCaprio age in my mind.
I mean, we've seen him grow up, right? So it is a little jarring and it's a little odd, because we don't want to think that we're that old. And I think we've seen him in the Revenant beard and everything. And this is a little bit more tailored than that. And they even, clean up his beard and fix him up before he goes onto the screen. But I just like the fact that here are these two, science geeks from Michigan State. And once they get to the media and go before the camera, in that prep room, when he's talking and everything, like there's that other guy who's saying, oh yeah, we got to get him a better script, we got to prep him, you know, because he's going to lose it, when it was actually, you know, Jennifer Lawrence who loses it. And so yeah, I felt like that I wanted more of that whole fling that he has with, you know, Kate Blanchett. Was like, okay, fine, but I wish that there was a moment where he was like going through like tremendous amount of guilt or something about all that, you know, apart from having this anxiety level of planet killer coming down. But maybe, I mean, it could have been, even if they said, well, we're all gonna die, so I just felt like, I'm sorry I cheated on you, but we're all gonna die, and she was there, and you know.
Yeah, but it was, I mean, but it's not even that sort of thing, because they are in a relationship, even if it's just like a, you know, a sexual thing for the most part, because it's clear that she doesn't really care about him.
No.
But yeah, I think for a movie that's almost 2.5 hours long, they could have slotted in 10 minutes of, you know, just that little bit of a bridge there, especially because I think the ending of this movie is just stirring. And not talking about the very end where it's kind of this funny tag, you know, post credits thing, but the end where they show, you know, because things, spoiler alert, things don't work out for mankind. This is not an Armageddon situation where they blow up the rock and everything's fine. The world ends.
Yeah.
And it ends in a way that is very sweet and very, you know, moving, with the family reunited and sitting around the dinner table with Jennifer Lawrence and her newfound, you know, skater boyfriend, Timothy Chalamet, who is in every movie. It's so strange. I'm at the point now where I'm surprised if I don't see him in the cast list somewhere. And then what is the name?
He'll be in the new Scream.
Probably. I'm trying to find.
What is the name of who?
Okay, yeah, Rob Morgan as Dr. Teddy Oglethorpe. He's so good in this movie. I don't know this actor.
Well, he was in something recently that I saw. So I know him from like Stranger Things, Daredevil. He was in Mudbound. Oh, I saw him recently in The Unforgivable, the Sandra Bullock Netflix movie. But yeah, I mean, he was really good in that for the small part he had. But yeah, he's a great presence, great actor. I wish they did more with him.
Well, I think they did just about enough, because he's not a character like he's very important in the beginning, because he's from that Space Defense Agency, and he sort of goes with them to meet with the president. But he's sort of pushed to the side, or actually kind of takes himself out of the picture.
Yeah.
Once it's clear the scientists have kind of gone off, you know, on their own media meltdown and media, you know, whirlwind, and he comes back at the end to be part of this dinner. And, you know, I think it's a very personal thing for me, because within the last week, our 4-year-old son has started asking questions about death. You know, am I going to die? When am I going to die? I never want to die. You know, are you going to die? And so we're having like around the dinner table, he won't let it go. Dinner, breakfast, we're having these like tearful conversations where we're trying to like reassure him, but it's just so sad to think, you know, that he's having to think about these things now.
Yeah.
That when I'm watching the scene at the dinner table at the end where they're making jokes and banter, but then the lights start to flicker and then things start to rumble, and they're trying to keep the conversation going. But then you just see Leo, he puts his arm around his son who's sitting next to him just for that one last moment of connection. For a movie that's broad kind of satire in a lot of places, I think it's being given unfair shakes for just how much this movie critiques humanity, but also sees the good in it. I don't think this is a cynical movie. I think this is a movie that's sort of disappointed because it understands what we are at our core, but what we've gotten swept up in terms of nonsense and fighting with each other.
Yeah, the good in it, or the potential for good. You know, what we could be. You know, in sadly, in the most foxhole moments, you know, that we have. You know, it's like, you know, when do you pray the most? Well, when you're, you know, your mom's in surgery or whatever. You know, it's like, other than that, but yeah, I think I did like that moment, and it could have been really. I'm glad they didn't make it like, you know, too like, I don't know, smug or heavy-handed or you know, jokey. because this kind of movie does need that kind of balance, and because it doesn't take long for it to go back to the humor. But I think that in and of itself, that scene with the family would probably be one of the most memorable moments of the movie. I think, I'm sure a lot of people will be like, oh, there's all these great jokes, Jonah Hill was so hilarious. I'm like, no, he wasn't. I got so tired of his character really fast, like immediately.
I liked him, but I think I laughed loud, during a couple of his jokes, but he's one of those characters, I think, or one of those actors that was around a lot for a long time, and I kind of got sick of him. But now that he's been kind of off the scene, when he's back, I'm like, oh yeah, I like Jonah Hill.
It's funny because this is like, okay, this is what the super bad kid wound up growing up to be. I could totally see that. I could totally see that.
Yes.
It's like, I just feel like he's playing a variation of other characters, and with the kind of like the thin beard and everything. I'm like, okay, they're clearly modeling him after one of the Trump boys. Okay, fine. I get it. And Streep is the female Trump. Okay, fine. But yeah, I just feel like when I talk about balance, if you're putting those characters in the Oval Office, you have the mother and the son, Meryl Streep and Jonah Hill, and then you have Jennifer Lawrence and DiCaprio's characters. Totally different, because, and I get it, I understand that. It's just, I wish it wasn't so diametrically different, just because here's two characters who are taking this really seriously, and here's two characters who are so bored and oblivious, and all they're thinking about is where they rate in the polls, and what this is going to do for their voting party or whatever. But I guess, just like, I don't know, I felt like, can we have some type of moment or some type of inkling where either of these characters is taking this news somewhat serious?
There is, yeah. I like that diametric opposition that you bring up as a device, because I think it's part of the greater commentary that McKay is trying to deliver here, which is, you've got the sort of regular people. Non-regular people aren't Michigan U scientists, but they are people. You get the feeling that they don't really care about the news or politics or TV. They're doing their work.
Yeah.
And so they have an idea of like, okay, we're going to go tell the president of the United States that, they have to get these defense systems ready because the world's going to blow up. They believe in the institution, but then they meet these,
think they'd be taken seriously.
Right. But then they meet these sort of media creatures, and that's why they're freaked out so much, is because, like, no, you're not listening to me, and you don't even seem to understand quite what we're getting at. There is a great line where Jennifer Lawrence is talking to her boyfriend at the beginning of the movie, Hamish Patel, and he's like, she can't quite say what this whole disaster is about yet, but he's like on the phone, he's like, this is really just about how you don't get along with my mom, or you don't want to meet my mom. And she's like, you're right, can we just plan a dinner for 7 months from now?
I love it. It's one of those great lines that, like, it's only between like her and you, the viewer, that, like, then she knows, but he doesn't. Yeah, it's a funny line. And Lawrence is good in this, in her delivery, and her the way she's kind of balancing everything, believable. I felt like it was just so, it became just this joke that is overplayed and overplayed and overplayed again and again, where they're always either Jonah Hill's character or somebody on the TV show. They're always like making fun of her, the screaming girl, or thanks for dressing up, when she's clearly just not, she's in average clothes and whatever. It's like, I don't know, I felt like maybe a couple of times I guess it's always kind of funny, but it's like, can we move on from that, is what I felt.
There wasn't I think what I'm picking up here is that there wasn't any humanizing moment for Hill or Streep's character. They're
Right.
always in that kind of a cartoon mode.
Yeah.
Even if there was a moment where they sort of break character and say, look, I have to be like this for the TV. I don't believe half of this stuff. Or look, I know it's serious, but we have to sell this to the public. You know, we have to put on kind of a show. There's none of that. And it is very broad. And people, one criticism I keep hearing is like this, Adam McKay thinks he's made Dr. Strangelove. This isn't Dr. Strangelove. It's not, but there are elements in it that, you know, share some DNA with Strangelove. Strangelove is a brilliant satire, but it also does have its share of broadly drawn one-dimensional characters.
For sure.
You know, you've got the ex-Nazi scientist, you know, he's played by Peter Sellers, along with like half the other roles in that movie. There's no humanity to him. There's no nuance, but he's still kind of a great, colorful character. And that's where I place, you know, Streep and Hill in this movie. They're not, fortunately, they're not the entire flavor of the whole thing.
I would also kind of place Mark Rylance's character in that role. And I don't know, to me, he was kind of this like almost surprising presence that was like, oh, wow. I mean, well, from his first delivery of his first line, I was like, okay, what is going on here?
Mark, I'm glad you brought him up, because I think that Mark Rylance does have a hint of that balance. It's, well, not balance, but that dimension, because there is one scene. Now let's, for folks who don't know what we're talking about, and if you don't, please watch the movie and finish this conversation. He plays Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Bezos, Elon Musk. He's basically a super nerdy, socially awkward tech gazillionaire who is rolling out his new phone. And we first meet him when he's giving a presentation. It's called it's Bash Electronics. I guess bashing over the head. Stage. Bring these kids out, and he's, you know, they're all holding the phones. And his first line, I think they're saying, is like, I just started this technology company because I always just wanted to have a friend. And he's almost whispering it, and people should be like, what the hell is he talking about?
but they're like, you know, holding their breath at every word he says, you know.
But the nuance I'm talking about is he's this sort of aloof, almost a zany character. But there is a scene where, I believe it's when DiCaprio and he are checking out this, is it when they're looking at the spaceships that they're going to send up to dismantle the asteroid? I want to say it was in the hangar. And DiCaprio is saying something, he makes some kind of an offhanded comment to, he says he's getting wind of the collusion between Bash and the presidential administration, because it turns out Mark Rylance's character was like the top donor to Meryl Streep's campaign.
Was a Golden Eagle contributor.
Yeah, right. Gold Eagle level contributor. But DiCaprio says, you know, this is the end of the world, and all you can think about is business. And that like flips a switch in Rylance's head, and he goes from being like this kind of a kooky guy. He's like, business. Oh no, we've got 40 million data points on you going back to like 1996. And it takes this really dark turn that holds up the mirror of how much we've given ourselves to technology and allowed it to understand us in ways that we barely understand ourselves.
Right. It's like this, when DiCaprio drops that line, it's like this insult almost. It's like, that's how you see me. I don't want to be seen like that. And you could tell that, like, when people refer to him like that, it's like, no, you know, total, you know, insult. This Peter Isherwell character I thought it was really interesting. And of course, the fact that he has probably more power than the president has, you know, the president, you know, on speed dial, and, you know, it has the puppet strings there attached to the president, you know, it makes sense. You know, it's like, I just felt like this is, you know, the movie could have just been called This Is Us, you know, instead of Don't Look Up, you know.
I was that would have been very confusing for a lot of people. They're like, they made a This Is Us movie.
They made a movie
awesome.
Out of this? Oh, cool.
I want to talk about something real quick. The title of this movie you brought up, Don't Look Up. Yeah. I thought that whole conceit was going to be central to the movie. It's like the last 20 minutes they introduced this idea of the comet. You can actually see it in the sky, and so the Streep presidential, you know, the Republicans essentially are saying, just don't look up and you won't see it. It worked for me better when it was described to me as the premise of a movie than actually watching it in execution. because it's the most ham-handed global warming metaphor that you can think of. Because with global warming, I know there are debates and there are people with different opinions, but one of the central problems with the debate is that you can't see it in action hanging above your head. You could say, look at the polar ice caps and all this other stuff, but there is also another side of it. An argument to me made that, well, Al Gore back in 2006 said that if we don't act immediately, we're all going to be living underwater by the year, 2010 or, 2020 or whatever. And that didn't happen. So I think if they were going to make that more of a central thesis, that it shouldn't have been crammed into the last 20 minutes, because when that redneck looks up in the sky, is like, I didn't think it was real. It's been up there for like 2 weeks.
But he wasn't looking up. And
right. You cannot do that. Like, there's no way you
Sure.
can't look up in the sky. It's the cartoon taken to a cartoonish, an even more cartoonish level.
Yeah. I mean, I do feel it. Yeah, obviously that's an extreme look at an extreme look at how people go to extremes. I do feel like there are people out there like that. I mean, who are just, even though it's right in front of them, they'll deny it. Even though they've experienced it, they'll deny it. I mean, I know people who've had COVID, who've been hospitalized, and they still don't believe it exists. It's like, oh, what?
Well,
okay.
Let me ask you this question, not to get into a COVID thing, but do they not believe it exists, or do they not believe in like some of the preventative, like the measures that are being taken to attack it from like a governmental point? Or are you literally saying they were diagnosed with COVID, hospitalized with it, and they don't believe that they had it?
No, they know that they had it, but they don't believe that it's a thing. I don't understand how to describe it, or I just,
okay.
I can't. That's what I'm saying. It's like, I'm not surprised by some of the things we see being made fun of in Don't Look Up, because it's that whole thing of the nonfiction world of it all is almost more unbelievable than what we're seeing on screen.
Well, but to that point, and I think this is where McKay kind of loses in terms of the satire is, I mentioned that he kind of fires off in all directions, but there isn't a lot of nuance to it. And to kind of go back to what you're saying, if you were to ask the person, that had COVID, why they don't believe in COVID, like big picture COVID, because I think I kind of know what you're talking about, because I've seen this argument before, but there are reasons for people thinking that way. Instead of just throwing up your shoulders like, I can't understand how anyone would think this. There's a possibility that you are thinking that they're thinking something they're not, like making an assumption about their beliefs.
It could be.
Right. But that's where nuance is sort of very important, and where a lot of the divides that this movie kind of exposes. One of the reasons there are these divides is because people are deliberately, in some cases, not understanding each other, because there's like, oh, that's crazy, I don't even want to touch that. But if you sat down and had a conversation, you might find out that they are, drinking like, lighter fluid recreationally, or you might find out they have some concerns that might not be as crazy as you think. And that goes for, global warming too. People say, well, the polar bears are all going to, float away. That's so ridiculous. But, you could look at some data and say, well, yeah, there are significant problems that we're facing right now. And, here's the data, and here's what some people want to do about it.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I mean, we've seen the footage early on in the pandemic of people who denied that COVID is a thing. They get COVID, they're in the hospital, and then there's videos of them saying, I was wrong. Please go get yourself, treated, make sure you're staying healthy, all this stuff. I get it. I think on a basic level, what this movie does is look at how people don't want to face a reality that forces them to like look at reality, face a reality that causes them to change or think differently, or just do something that they're not used to doing. I'd rather just continue my life, moving on along and not paying attention to this news about Yeah, I'd rather pay more attention about this, Ariana Grande's character breaking up with Kid Cudi, than I'd rather focus on that, knowing in the back of my mind that, yeah, there's this planet killing comet that's coming to me, because it's
Yeah.
easier.
Well, I think there is part of that too. But also the idea that, in terms of media and government and just, human beings have been wrong or misleading about so much that
We're bedfellows.
well, right, or bedfellows, that to say it's so unbelievable to say that there's a comet coming towards Earth that is going to destroy us in 6 months. It's almost like, come on.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to be honest and say that this movie made me think, like, okay, well, how would I react? Whereas movies like Deep Impact or Armageddon, I mean, they didn't. I mean, I just know that I'm watching a summer blockbuster. It's like, okay, but this one actually made me think, like, gosh, yeah, and there's been news reports in the past, 5 to 10 years of like, oh, there's a comet coming, but it's going to miss us. It's going to come pretty close, though. It'll be visible on Thursday night at 2 a.m., and, and then during the whole election, it's like, instead of, Trump or Biden or whatever, just pray for a comet to come and take us all.
Yeah, as a comet 2020. Yeah.
Comet 2020. It's like, okay, I get it. And I understand that. It's like, just this whole world is crazy. Just, I'd be fine if something just happened to just take it all away. But when it comes down to it, it's like, obviously you think about your mortality, you think about, you think about all those heavy and deep things. So you want to be around people who also think that. So that's why it was just so funny to see you got Tyler Perry and Cate Blanchett. Like, okay, well, how big is this thing? You think it could go around New Jersey and hit my ex-wife's house?
Yeah.
And these guys are like, and that's where when you have that whole network moment, it's like, you guys are all gonna die.
I two things.
Mhm.
One, I'm surprised there wasn't a joke anywhere in this movie, because they keep referring to it as it's 9 to 10 kilometers long. I was waiting for someone, especially like Blanchett or Tyler Perry, to say,
Yeah.
Can you just like talk in English numbers? Because
Yeah.
I was having trouble doing the conversion. Like, is that big? I don't know.
Yeah, it would be great if there was like, okay, well, how many football fields? It's like,
yeah,
like how many Super Bowls is that?
how many Costco's wide is this thing?
Right.
But no, I'm glad you brought up Network, because that's another movie that this is sort of being compared to unfavorably. Oh, Don't Look Up it's not Network by any stretch. I feel like there's one too many. Have you seen Network?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I feel like there's one too many, and there's only two, but there's one too many. I'm mad as hell and not going to take any more moments. There's Jennifer Lawrence's meltdown, and then there's Leo's meltdown. And I think because Leo's meltdown goes on for a long time, it feels less like an impassioned speech, and it feels at once like it's Leo DiCaprio breaking the fourth wall and saying, I'm a huge environmentalist and this is a big problem, you guys go out and save a whale. And also it feels like Leo saying, this is going on my Oscar reel.
Yeah.
Whereas the Jennifer Lawrence one felt more organic, I guess.
Well, it's almost like hers was more like, I can't believe this is how people are reacting. I don't want to be here anymore. And his is something I feel like we probably have a little bit more screen time or spend more time with him, just because, she becomes a meme and she's not a friend to the media. And so we see that boiling point that he has that you were mentioning is kind of built up to a little bit more. We have more time to build up to that. Sure, yeah, maybe it goes on a little bit longer. But I also think because we've seen his, episodes of anxiety and everything, it kind of makes sense, that he's just like, this is it, I'm going to lose it here.
It does make sense, but I think, the Network comparison, that meltdown is more of a roiling thing. the I'm mad as hell, not going to take it anymore was punctuation to the end of a really long building diatribe.
Right.
Whereas when Leo starts yelling, he just keeps yelling. And I was surprised that, you know, a producer didn't cut him off, because he's not only yelling, he's swearing and yelling. And especially if this is, even if it's on cable TV, you can't be dropping F-bombs on, you know, Morning Joe. Maybe it's different in the reality of the lib, sorry, the rip, but it's just, yeah, it was just a bit much. And I think in a world where network didn't exist, this might have been this generation's network, but it was just a bit clumsy, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the movie does, like, apart from the time that Dr. Mindy, let's just say Dr. Mindy spends with his family at the end, the like third act of the movie just kind of doesn't go off the rails, but it just kind of like, it really just tries to cram in all these things towards the end.
Like they're forming an activist group, and like they've got, it reminded me of the movie Dave, where they've got like the local campaign office and there's people like working on stuff. I'm like, what is going on here?
What are they working on? It's like the world's ending. I did like certain bits where, like, when literally things were exploding and being destroyed. There's that scene I think it's like in a hotel bar with like you know, Tyler Perry and Cate Blanchett. They're like, she's just like, no, I'm not gonna make out with you. I'm just gonna drink here and talk shit about people or whatever, you know.
There's another scene in because it is a very America-centric movie, and that was one of the criticisms I think Michael Phillips may have raised. But but there is a scene when the world is actually ending. We get a few shots of different places around the world, and there is this one guy on a mountaintop. I don't know what he was in, kind of like this very colorful dress and doing like a ritual dance as the comets as the chunks of it were kind of coming down around him. I was like, that's interesting, because it gives an insight into how different people, you know, it will experience their mortality. That's
how I would want to be. I'd want to be on some, you know, tropical island while the world ends and just watch everything fall apart. I think one of the overuse elements of this movie is some of those montages. At first I was like, all right, what are we doing here? Because I mean, you know, McKay's kind of all over the place. He shows like maybe an iguana and maybe some car tires or whatever. It's like, what are we doing here? You know, and it's just to progress to the story a little bit, but also just kind of quickly give a bigger picture of like, this is the world, you know, showing everybody, you know. And I feel like, okay, there's maybe about 4 or 5 of those in this movie, at least. And it just felt like, all right, this is, I see what you're doing here. I get it.
I almost feel like it would work if instead of montages, he picked like one image from those montages and used them almost like chapter openings, you know, because I do like the idea of taking an examination of, you know, the world is ending because this one species got completely out of control and full of itself and is going to take out all the other species on the planet. It's a nice idea, but to your point, it is a bit kind of overused and not as elegant as it could have been.
But you know, and this movie's, you know, far from elegant, but you know, I guess, and you know, McKay has done that a little bit in his last 2 movies, Vice and The Big Short, of course, you know, with these quick cuts and editing and showing different things. And it's a style that keeps it, you know, kind of lively and on its toes. Fine. Of course, in the third act, it's just going to be obvious that, you know, the president and I guess isn't it Mark Rylance's character who said that, oh, we have an escape plan, we have a spaceship that we've prepared, and we have a spot for you. And of course the president's on the plane, on the spaceship, and she's like talking to her son on the phone, and she forgot that he could have been her +1, but she totally
she's talking to Leo DiCaprio's character.
Oh, that's right.
And says, you know, we've got a spot for you, and he's back at home like, no, I'm good.
I'm good.
And then I think he's like, you know, save that spot for your son or something. And then she hangs up the phone. She's like, oh shit.
That's right.
But yeah, so they fly off in this starship. And then there's a post-credit sequence. There's two, and I'm glad you informed me of this because I don't think I would have been cognizant
They
of
were
it.
passengers like Jennifer Lawrence and Chris Pratt. Oh, sorry.
Yes, they were. That is a reality where they can coexist. But no, but it picks up in like, I think it says like something like 27,000 years later. And they land on a planet that can support, you know, life and vegetation and stuff. Yeah. And they all get out. And one of the things
they're all naked.
They're all naked. But one of the things I thought was great was they have the sleep pods, which we've seen in all these science fiction movies. Yeah. They're waking up, but they've got the names of the people on the pods, but we don't see their names. We see what they are, like, you know, mega bank donor, right, pharmaceutical rep, you know, or president or something like that. And then they all get off, and it's a wacky little business that doesn't work, but I love it. During one of the earlier scenes when Mark Rylance is talking about how many data points he has on everyone, it might have even been that scene with DiCaprio, and the president, he says, "I know exactly how you're going to die." And then the president leans in and says, "So how am I going to die?" He's like, "Oh, you're going to be eaten by a boo." And she's like, "What's that?" And he's like, "We're not entirely sure." And it turns out that in the post-credit sequence, a doo or whatever it is, this giant prehistoric alien bird that eats her face.
I love that. I almost, like, when I was watching it, I'm like, wow, I wish there could have been more of this like crazy, you know, totally out of left field moments in the rest of the movie. I don't know. It's like, because I almost feel like we're gonna go there with this end credit scene, but we were kind of afraid to go there and have that kind of moment in the actual movie.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, it's like I don't know. I kind of stumbled upon that. I was just letting the credits, and you know how Netflix is, they want you to jump onto the next thing, and you got to actually select play credits, you know. So I was just letting it play, and I was like, oh, okay, you know. And then the final scene is just like, you know, the White House or wherever is in shambles, and we see, you know, Jonah Hill coming out of the rubble, like, you know, mom, on his phone.
And then he does gets on YouTube or something, is like, you know, hashtag survived or something like that. You know, that's kind of cute, but I don't know. I'm like, what do you do with that?
Okay. Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, that's another addition to his, you know, one note character. I think some of the smaller moments when we do see, you know, humanity and its potential is what makes this movie, you know, like I mentioned off screen here, is rewatchable, because I just like some of those moments. Like, it's another comedy bit that's revisited maybe a bit too much, but I did like the fact that, like, here's this like 4-star general, whatever, you know, charging these visitors for snacks. And then the moment when Jennifer Lawrence's character realizes it, she realizes, she's shocked by it. She goes back and tells, you know, the other scientists about it. And then later on, when she's just like hanging out with her new boyfriend, you know, Timothée Chalamet, she's like, why would he do that? You know,
there's like 2 or 3 callbacks to that, you know, charging for snacks. And it's funny because it is kind of one of those relatable things.
Yeah.
Because she cannot fathom that a 4-star general that's one of the things I love about this movie, is the idea that everybody in it is a human being. You know, down and not only, you know, literally they're
beyond titles.
Right. Yeah. Beyond titles, they're just people. The people you see on TV, they could be alcoholics and sex addicts. The president can be a narcissist, you know, and an idiot. The scientists, you hope that they have your best interest at heart, but they are just as fallible to being seduced and putting out propaganda as anybody. You know, but the other thing that I think keys into that, at least for me, is it's almost like when you have a horrible nightmare that, you know, that you're dying and the world is ending or something bad happens, and then you wake up and you're like, I feel like I've got a new lease on life. None of that was real. I'm totally in charge. I felt that way at the end of this movie. It's like, we have so much potential here. And for as cynical as some people think that this movie is, I think in a weird way, it's an oddly hopeful film, because it's like, it could get this bad, but it doesn't have to be. You know,
doesn't
take the
have to
reins
be.
now. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be. And there's that great moment, which is kind of similar to what you just said, where, you know, Dr. Mindy says to his family and his guests, like, we really had it all, didn't we?
Yes.
You know, and yeah, wow.
It's we really have it all.
We really have it all. Yeah.
We do. I mean,
Yeah.
the line is had it all, but right now, us talking,
really have
you and
it all.
me, we can do whatever we need to do.
And that's the thing, is there's always something to critique. There's always something to complain about. There's always something to worry about. But why spend your energy on all that stuff? You know,
that's why I'm giving up being a film critic as of this broadcast.
I'm glad to witness the end of it. Be a part of it.
I'm gonna pat you on the back, David. No.
I wish it was called. I'd like a sequel where it's "Don't Look Down" and it's about all of our phone use and how we're always looking down. You know.
No, it'd just be a montage of those people, like you see them in news clips sometimes, like the street cams where people walk into manholes. Like, oh God, it's so bad.
Yeah,
all right, well, thank you very much for talking about Don't Look Up. Thank you for suggesting that I watch it, because this, for as uneven as I found a lot of like the little bits of it, this is, you know, one of my favorite films of 2021, although I watched it in 2022. So yeah.
Well, you could watch it again and say the same thing.
Sure.
Oh, you watched it in 2022. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, I watched it like, or maybe, yeah, it was New Year's weekend. So
okay, yeah, because it did drop. Was it Christmas? Was it Christmas Day? I think.
I don't know. I'm kind of like everybody else, like media, all that stuff is kind of like it's blacked out during the holidays. You know, it's just it's a frenzy of stuff, and you kind of come back on the third. Totally. It's like, what happened the last 2 weeks? Totally. But all right, man. Well, thank you again, David Fowley of Keeping It Real. Your info is in the description below, so everyone go check out David's stuff. Thank you for talking with me. Thank you for watching, and yeah, we'll be back talking about something else, something to perhaps scream about in the near future.
Very soon.
Woohoo! All right, take care, man.
Yay, bye.
Bye.